I'm Kara Infante, and this is Bookish Flights. In each episode, I chat with one bookish guest as we take some time to sample and savor the pairing recommendations from their bookish flight. We hope to give you suggestions to cultivate your TBR list and nurture your leisure time through books. In today's episode, I am chatting with Dr. Trunnis Goggins. Trunnis is an educator, author, consultant for both small businesses and high-rated institutions. Trunnis is also the host of a podcast called The 4 Ps of You and has a book coming out this year with the same name. The 4 Ps are passion, planning, purpose, and persistence, which are all essential in our life's journeys towards success. Trunnis was born and raised in Buffalo, New York, and is a veteran of the United States Navy. He currently lives in Asheville, North Carolina, with his wife and eldest grandson. Welcome to the show, Trunnis.
Thank you very much. I'm glad to be here. Thank you for having me.
Yes, we're a fellow Navy family here as well. So.
Oh, great. So you guys, that's why I like you guys. Good people.
Yeah. So, well, thank you for your service.
Thank you.
Yes. Well, I'm so glad to have you here on the show today. And I feel like we are always so much more than this bio. So can you tell us a little bit about who you are?
Well, like I said, I definitely, I'm an educator. I started late in life. I was in the military. When I went to the military, I had just had my high school diploma, and I was working, and I was doing I was a recruiter at the time when this happened. And I had I did other jobs in the Navy, but I was a recruiter at this time. And I had a chief come up to me, and he was about ready to retire. And it was matter of fact, this is actually in my book, this story. And the chief came up to me and said, Goggins, I'm like, what? He goes, you are probably one of the best sailors I ever worked with. You are motivated, you get the job done, all this other stuff. I'm like, oh, fantastic. He goes, I'm retiring in here in a couple months, and if your resume ever crossed my desk, I'm not hiring you. And I'm like, what? And I'll never forget it. He goes, I'm not hiring you. I said, why is that? He goes, because you had an opportunity to get a free education and never took up on it.
Wow.
And this was on it was sometime in October, like, because I remember it was just before Thanksgiving. And by November, I was enrolled in class and going. And I started in November of 2004 and did not
Wow.
stop until I got my doctorate. It was all because of him,
Yeah.
and that guy, like I said, he's in my book. He's a dear mentor of mine. He's a great guy, and even with that, he actually, and I'm giving him. I know he said tell me about me, but I wanted to tell you a little bit about him. He that whole group, we were in that whole recruiting command. All of us that were under his command got a college degree, every
Wow.
single one of us. He was a fantastic person. But that was a very great part of my life. But it helped me into being the person I am today, where I had a daughter who passed away, unfortunately.
I'm sorry to hear
And
that.
so I raised her son.
Okay.
But if I wouldn't have been able to do that, I wouldn't have been able to gain all the resources I gained without that type of education and without that type of push. There are other things that happened in my life that were great catapults, I should say, that led me to where I am today. But that was again, that person right there. Not only did he help me, but he helped me and the future generations of my family, and I do appreciate that.
Yeah. And talk
Mhm.
about being the inspiration or like the fire to get you going and what a journey it took you on from just that one statement. And that
Yeah,
was
it was
all
that
it
one
took.
statement. And he made me so mad because he said, I would not hire you. I was like, dude, whatever, and I
Yeah.
said, I'm going to show you. And actually it did. It actually showed my entire family. And now I have a daughter behind, and I'm not saying it's because of me. I'm not saying, not at all saying it's because of me, but now I have a daughter that's just about 2 or 3 years away from getting her PhD.
Nice.
So yeah.
And
So
I think about your point of like, I got angry when I first heard the first part of his sentence, right? But you still listened. You still listened to what he said, which I feel like initially sometimes anger can turn us off, right? That defensiveness goes up and we don't hear. But
right.
you listened, and that's awesome. So did you
Absolutely.
know at that moment Like what you might go to school for, or did it take some journeying to figure out what you would go to?
Well, I grew up in a business family.
Okay.
My dad owned a business. Even my grandfather, my mother's father, owned a car wash years ago before he joined the military. My dad owned businesses everywhere. And so I knew that, I was business minded.
Okay.
And so when I got my degree in business. I really did think that I was going to go into the corporate world, so to speak. And then I realized that I do not have there are two different mindsets in business. There is the entrepreneurial mindset,
Sure.
there's a corporate mindset. And I'm somewhere in between that. There's only so I will listen to you for only so long. Then after that, I want to do it my way.
Yeah.
So that's when you become an entrepreneur. So yeah. Mhm.
Yeah, there's
Yeah.
something to be said. I've been reflecting on my podcast journey, and every time I can think back to it, it's like you did this on your own. And there's something,
Mhm.
that entrepreneurial mindset to see like where you started, where you've come, and that's such a cool journey to kind of reflect on.
Absolutely. It is.
So you have a book coming out. Can you tell us about it?
The book is called The Four P's of You.
Okay.
And the four P's are, and you brought that up in the introduction, and that was planning, purpose. Purpose is the first one, actually. So it's purpose, planning, passion, and persistence.
Okay.
And the book is actually, so I do a lot of consulting, I do a lot of teaching. The book actually became the book, so to speak. I was teaching some inmates at a prison in Indiana, and these guys were very excited to get out of prison. All right. And so the first thing I asked these guys were, and these they're totally rehabilitated. It was the training that we were doing as part of a welding class. The state of Indiana really put together a beautiful program to get inmates out and become productive members of society again, and give them a course. So anyway, I'm talking to these guys. I said, "Hey, what are you going to do when you get out?" They were talking about, getting a real meal. They're talking about, can't wait to see their families. Some of them, like, I can't wait to see my daughter for the first time. I mean, like, literally the first time.
Wow.
And so some of these really brought you to tears. And so then my follow-up question is, okay, what do you want? Now, remember, I had at the time in this class, I had 15 people
Okay.
who were extremely excited to get out, and they told me all the things they were going to do on their first day, all of the excitement they had to get out. But then I asked them, what do they want? And they went silent. They went
Wow.
absolute silent.
Yeah.
And I was like, what do you want? I mean, what do you want to do? Where do you want to live? What do you want to do? What do you want? And nothing. And I said, if you don't know what you want, you're always going to be in prison.
Yeah.
And you need to go out and find out who you are. What do you want? What do you like? Who you are as a person, all these different things. And so I left the the class that day, and I was driving back to the hotel. And I was driving back to the hotel. I was like, there's a lot of us that don't know what we want. And then I thought about, and this is a movie that I'm going to now show my age. I actually saw this movie in the movie theater. It was Trading Places. Do you remember the movie Trading
Yep.
Places with Eddie Murphy and Dan Aykroyd? Great movie. All right. Very funny.
Yeah.
And even in comedies, you will always see something that's serious. And towards the very beginning of the movie, Eddie Murphy's character gets arrested for panhandling or whatever he got arrested for. And then the two brothers went and bailed him out because they were going to do this experiment, so to speak. So he didn't know, he being Eddie Murphy, he didn't know who bailed him out of jail. So he walks out of the courthouse or the jail or wherever he was coming out of, and he walked down the stairs, and he stopped, and he looked to his left, and he went to walk to his left. Then he looked to his right, and he went to walk to his left, or walk to his right. And the thing is he was walking out of something, and he had no idea where he was going.
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm thinking about how many times have we as people walked out of something? How many times have we walked out of a job, could not wait to get out of that job?
Yeah.
Okay. And when we walked out, we looked to our left, we looked to our right, and we had nowhere to go. Okay. How many times have we walked out of a marriage? couldn't wait to get out of the marriage. Okay, you're talking to somebody who's been divorced before, but
Yeah.
couldn't wait to get out of the marriage. You walked out, you looked to your left, you looked to your right, you had nowhere to go. When a lot of times, and this is a horrible thing, but there's a lot of military suicides.
Yeah.
And one of the reasons why there's a lot of military suicides is because when you are in the military, you have a plan, you have a goal, you have a structure, you have this is okay. So I'm a sergeant today, and if I work real hard today, I'm going to be a staff sergeant next week, whatever.
Yeah.
Okay. And then you walk out of the military, either you retire or your contract is over, either way, and you walk out of the military, you have nowhere to go.
Yeah.
Okay. So the book that I wrote is designed to give all of those people a place to go. Remember, I am a consultant, so I actually take this in a almost a strategic planning type way. I start out with purpose. If you're a business, it's a mission. Okay.
Sure.
Who are you? What is your purpose? But remember, I said, what is your purpose? So many times, for whatever reason, we want to live someone else's purpose and
Yeah.
we're miserable.
That, or I feel like we will get constraints from society, right? Or our families,
Absolutely.
or with best of intentions, but I think you should do this, or you need to have this type of
Hmm.
job, or, you know, and I think, yeah, that is very hard to break out of that to see what is my purpose.
Exactly. Again, talking about shows, Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer, the original. Remember the little elf that wanted to be a dentist,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
I want to be a dentist. Yeah, I don't want to make toys. I want to be a dentist. That's a great honorable profession, but they were making fun of him because so make sure you serve your own purpose.
Yeah.
Okay. So, but then you have to find out what your purpose is. And that's what, you have to go deep down and see what you're good at and this, that, and the other. But then once you get your purpose, then you have to plan. Okay. And that is the hardest part in achieving your purpose is planning because not everything goes as planned. And you
Yeah.
always have to have backup plans. And then you have to plan your purpose to your skills and you have to make sure your skills meet. And sometimes part of your plan is, are you in the right place? If you are in Cincinnati, Ohio, and you say, I want to open up a surfboard business, you're probably in the wrong place.
Yeah.
You know, so you want to make sure that you are in the right place doing the right things. You have the right skills. If you want to be a public speaker but you're an introvert, you're going to have to work around that or plan around that.
Yeah.
And that those are things that you do. And then the other thing is you have to have a passion. I don't care what you're doing, your purpose and your passion. If you do not have a passion to serve that purpose, and your passion cannot be money, if that's the sole thing, you're going to be miserable. I've
Yeah.
seen that firsthand. That people are driven by money and then they're empty because that money can't fill that space that they have. And then the other thing you have to have is persistence. And that persistence is, like I said, things don't always go as planned. You're going to hear the word no. Things are going to happen. I have just, this is a time of year where everybody gets sick, right? Well,
Yeah.
I had to persist through COVID and through whatever else I had for the last month and a half in order to get to where I had to go to. And you just have to be persistent. You have to be physically persistent. You have to be emotionally persistent. You have to be financially persistent. You just have to be a persistent person, and you have to realize that things are going to happen to you, and you have to go. Now, even though I talk about the four P's, I do have a last chapter that talks about peace.
Okay.
I'm talking about driving you, driving you, driving you, driving
Yeah.
you, driving you. But the last thing is go out and find a place, find some place where you can relax, you can think, you can recharge, you can do things like that. And so I do have a chapter, just one, about peace and about how go somewhere. I know my quote unquote peace is every about 3 or 4 times a week, and I know that sounds weird, but my thing is to go play hockey.
Yeah.
Right, I play ice hockey, I play roller hockey, and I love it because for that hour and a half or however long I'm on the ice or on the surface, I'm not a writer, I'm not a consultant, I'm not a father, or I'm not a grandfather. I'm just a guy that's out there playing hockey,
And having fun.
laughing and, yeah,
Yeah.
laughing and talking and having it great. So when I get done with that hour and a half or whatever it is, I'm now, you know, I can now go in with a clear mind because I've found a place to kind of unwind, no, to unwind.
Yeah.
So that's basically what the book's about.
I love this. And
Mhm.
I think this speaks so much to also mothering because I've
Mhm.
had a lot of friends and I don't know if it's just military spouse mothers because we move, right, and our identity changes as we move and we're constantly moving, so it's constantly changing. And I find that at least the group of women in my life is always like, okay, well, what is our purpose, right? And trying to figure that out amongst the shifts that we're always having in this
Absolutely.
lifestyle. But I have found that really thinking about what I'm passionate about and then gearing myself towards that has really helped navigate my journey a little bit more.
It's funny that, what I've talked to a lot of military people. And a matter of fact, I still teach military members all the time. And a lot has changed in the military. But one thing that's always constant is what you just said. The military spouse is probably the hardest job in the United States military. And, everybody looks at us and says, thank you for your service, but it's the military spouse that we need to be thanking because you guys have got a rough job and you don't really get paid for it. At least we get a pension at the end of it.
Yeah.
You don't. So, yeah.
Yeah. And that's, I mean, and not to like knock that, but I think that at least as the service member, your job's always translating, right? Like your job's always going forward as we move. Where again, I'm back in the hamster wheel of like starting over every single
Mhm.
time. It's like, okay, this is something's got to give here. This isn't working. But do you find, I had another follow-up question about the four P's. Does the passion drive the persistence or vice versa, right? Because you can fall back on, okay, I don't understand where my path is going, or something came in the way and took me off, but I can go back to this is my passion and this is why I'm doing what I'm doing so I can
Mhm.
persist.
Yes, passion drives persistence. As a matter of fact, it's almost like if somebody right now told me there's a baseball bat and the baseball bat's $150. Okay, I'm going to look at him like that's way too much money.
Yeah.
I'm not spending $150 on a baseball bat. Now, if somebody came up to me today and says, "Here is a hockey stick that's $275. It's light as whatever," I'm like, "Dude, I need this hockey stick. I have no problem getting off of that hockey." Now, the thing is, it's funny because the persistence, the pain, so to speak, is spending that money,
Yeah.
right? But you know what? Because I have passion for something, I have no problem dropping that money. So, yes, passion actually drives. It's not persistence that drives passion.
Yeah.
It's actually passion that drives persistence because it's the level of pain that you're willing to take.
Yeah.
Okay. If I'm outside, again, I'm using baseball, and I hope I don't have and I hope you don't have a large baseball audience because I mean, I do like baseball at certain times of the year, but I don't play it. But if I'm outside, like I said, when I here in Asheville, I play roller hockey. It's outside. There's no roof. There's no anything. Okay. There are times where I will have, and in Asheville, even though it is North Carolina, it gets cold.
Yeah.
And last year, I haven't had to do it this year, but last year there was a night we were playing hockey. It was 9 degrees outside.
Woo.
I had absolutely no problem. I had my skates on. I put some of those warmers in it.
Yep.
I am so willing to go ahead and play that game. Okay. Now, granted, I could not wait for the game to end. I'm not gonna say there's I wanted to play so long. No, but now if someone said, "Hey, we're gonna play baseball. It's 9 degrees outside." I'm like, dude, I'm not doing that.
Yeah.
Okay. Now again, it's still persistence. You have to
Yeah.
you have to fight your way through the cold, but you would fight your way and persist through adversity on something that you love.
Yeah.
I mean, if you saw, and I'm going to use this type of animal, if you saw a rat that was swimming in a river and they were struggling, are you going to jump in for the rat?
Probably not.
Probably not. But are you going to jump in if your kid was like, "Mom, I'm uncomfortable"?
Yeah.
What are you going to do? I mean, you would probably be
100%.
fully close. You're in there. All
Yeah.
right. There's no question. Again, the persistence, your passion for your child far outweighs the passion for even any animal, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
But and that's the thing. So it's the passion that drives. You are willing to go further, and you're motivated. You're willing to do more, and you're willing to take more hits
Yeah.
if you have more passion.
Yeah. I like that you described it from the point of pain too. Because again, I'm thinking of moments of maybe you are on this journey of finding something different or changing your life or trying something different. But again, that hard moment comes in, and do you stop or do you keep going? And again, I love your point there of, well, the passion is, well, how much pain are you willing to go through to persist?
Right. Mhm.
So, well, when does your book come out?
My book will be out at the end of February
Nice. Okay.
of 2024.
Okay.
This book comes out now. I will say this. This book is a four P's. The four P's is the all four P's. All right. So you have passion, planning, persistence, purpose, all in that book.
Okay.
There is a follow-up book that comes out in September of
Okay.
2024, and that is actually called You. I'm almost done with it. Promise.
Okay.
It's called You Meant to Do That, and it's living your life intentionally and with purpose.
Okay.
And this book will totally talk about purpose. It'll talk about how it'll talk about it goes into more detail about purpose because
Okay.
you're going to read this first book, right? And you're going to read this first book and you're going to see all this stuff about purpose and all this stuff about planning and all this stuff about passion and persistence. And you're going to read this book and it's not giving you enough. It's like, how do you find your purpose? Right. And the
Yeah.
next book is how you meant to do that. How and you meant to do that is living life more intentional. Okay.
Okay.
And that's what the second book's about. But yes, the first book is out, talks about all four P's.
Okay.
There will be another book that comes out in 2025, and it's going to deal with just passion and persistence. I'm not going to write two separate books on that. I don't think I
Sure.
can. And even you tied them both together. So nice. And so you actually validated like, okay, the third book is going to
You
have
can't
both
tease them
because
apart.
I'm like, I can't take them apart, you know, and
Yeah.
you even put them together. So yes, and that's how the books are going to be lined up. And then
Okay.
after that, I will write a fourth book, but the fourth book will deal more with lessons of, this book that I wrote, the first book I wrote is designed to inspire for you to find a way and go
Yeah.
forward and move forward. The last book I'm going to write is going to be a book. Um, uh, it's going to be loosely based on, well, it's going to be really strongly tied to, I shouldn't say loosely based, strongly tied to conversations I had with my father. My
Okay.
father died 10 years ago. My father, again, like I told you, he was a strong entrepreneur. I mean, this guy, I mean, wow. I mean, there are musicians, Rick James, to tell you one, that would not
Yeah.
have been around if it wasn't for my father promoting and pushing and
Wow.
doing things for this guy. So my dad has done a lot of things. But when my dad was passing away, and as driven as that man was, I mean, he was the most driven man I've ever met in my life. Guy had a heart attack years ago and sat in the hospital and got out of the hospital because he had to go to work. And the doctor says,
Wow.
you're not supposed to leave. He says, no,
Yeah.
I got to go. I mean, that's how driven this man was. Now, that's probably why he died at 79. But anyway,
Yeah.
but but anyway, when he was dying, I had the opportunity, and I'm saying an opportunity because it really was, to sit there and listen to a driven man, okay, who sat there and said, you have to have balance. Because he had so much regret because he didn't have balance. And so the last book I write is like, yeah, I want you to be driven. And that's why they're coming out pretty quick, back to back to back, because I
Sure.
want you to be driven, but I also want you to find balance. You were just talking so fondly about your children, you
Yeah.
know. Now you still have to feed those children. Okay. So that's why you're doing what you're doing. There's
Yeah.
no, but now what you have to do is you have to find that balance. My daughter, I had a daughter who passed away, and she was a fantastic, was my oldest daughter. Unfortunately, she was shot,
Oh my
breaking
gosh.
up a fight. And when I was and I'm saying this, not so, I want your audience to kind of grasp this when I talk about balance.
Yeah.
So when my daughter and I were very close. Okay. She was a really strong kid. She really was. And when I went, and again, when I was a Navy recruiter, I was recruiter of the year. I was a recruiter in charge, and I brought my station to being a station of the year, and I did all these things,
Wow.
and that took a lot of hard work. And I'll never forget one day my daughter. I used to bring her to work sometimes. She had a friend of hers, another Navy, you know how Navy children are,
Yep.
and so she had another friend that was there, and she used to come to work with me a lot. And one day I was driving home from work, and she was in the car with me, and I was, so preoccupied with work. She says, "Dad, I love you, but I hate your job."
Mm.
And when I went to go, and this is and these are, I mean, that's the day I had to go to the crime scene to identify her body. When I went to go to that scene, I remember because I had to wait.
Yeah.
I remember her saying that to me. "Dad, I
Wow.
love you. I hate your job." And then I thought about all of the things that, well, I'm not, I can't do this today because I got to work. I
Yeah.
can't do this, I can't do that. Now, I'm not saying that you don't work and you're going to have to make every single event. That's
Sure.
impossible. You can't do
Yeah.
that. But you do have to find that balance.
Yeah.
And when I had two instances, one with my dad who died, and then 18 months later, my daughter died. But I had two instances where I was faced with balance. And in this world that we are living in today, where there's so many demands,
Yeah.
and you have technology that even makes it even more demanding. We create technology to make it easier, but it's not, because
Yeah.
you could be anywhere in the world and somebody can reach
Always.
out to you. "Hey, I need help." Like, what?
Yeah.
Why? And you would think that you can't go missing anymore. And so you do need to find, and again, the last book I write will be, yes, I want you to be a driven person, but the last thing I want you to do is, after you're driven and after you do all these things, I do not want you to be like my father, and I don't want you to be like me. My father
Yeah.
regretted, and he left this earth, but now I regret it, but I have to sit there and stay on this earth and keep on regretting the words that my daughter said to me. And
Yeah.
so here's how you can, limit. You're always going to have regrets, but this is how you can limit some of them and eliminate some of them, is just read this book about balance. And
Yeah.
so that's what the book will be. And and I don't have a title for that, but that will be my final book in that series. And then
Okay.
I'm going to go and start becoming a real writer. And I'm saying real writer in the sense of, because I really do. I do want to write a history book. And
Okay.
and I have a cousin of mine. We are going to get together and write a book together, hopefully by 2026. So
I
yeah,
love these goals.
yeah.
So I was thinking one thing as you were kind of telling these stories about your family is you always have to recalibrate, I think, back to your passion, because inevitably, like you're saying, whether it's technology or life or things are always pinging in to take your attention and steal it away. And so I always try to reset myself of where am I trying to go? What am I trying to do? And again, with this underlying of how do I get the most time with my kids while I have them, right? That's
Mhm.
my underlying purpose. That's going to be different for someone else. But I always have to recalibrate to be like, okay, is this serving my purpose when we're now out of the house 4 nights a week? Or no, that's
Mhm.
and so there's a recalibration that I think needs to happen too. And I think that's exactly what you're saying of finding this balance.
And it's funny that you brought that up, because there was and I talked about this I was in a speaking engagement a while ago, and you brought this up about recalibrating. I actually like yours a lot better. There's a book out there called Find Your Why. Do you remember that? It's
Yeah.
written by about 10, 15 years. Okay.
Yep.
All right. So find your why. That's fine. Okay. You want to be, you, Kara, want to be a good mother.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's not a why. That's a because.
Yeah.
Okay. So why are you okay? So you have young children right now. Okay. So why are you, I don't know, giving them a bath? Because you want to be a good mother. All
Yeah.
right. Now, if your kid is 15 years old and you are still giving this healthy child a bath, that's not being a good mother anymore.
Yeah.
So your why has changed. So, like you said, you have to recalibrate.
Yeah.
And I love that, how you have to recalibrate because our why changes all the time.
Yeah.
Our because never changes. I'm raising my grandson right now. Why? Because not because I want to be a good grandfather, which I do, all right,
Yeah.
but I want to be a good father.
Yeah.
Okay. My daughter is not here anymore. So I am privileged to make sure that her dreams and that she wanted with her kid are 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 fulfilled.
Yeah.
And so, with that being said, my because from the day she was born on February 11th, 1997 to today, my because never changed.
Sure.
But my why has changed a million times.
I love how you're saying that. My 18-year-old self or my 25-year-old self would never think I would be where I am today, but that's exactly because the why has been changing. And I think naively at 18, I never thought that that would be the case, right? I just thought you'd pick a job and you'd pick your goal and you'd get there and then you would just be that forever.
Right.
And I sure had it wrong.
We do. We do. But your because never changed, right? So there
Yes.
you go. Yeah. So, right.
So, well, I've had a lot of authors come on the show and they talk about the persistence or perseverance that you need to just write the book and then see the book published. Did you find you had to dig into that for this process?
Yes. Oh, yes. This is, I wrote a textbook a long time ago, and the textbook that I wrote was so easy. Oh my gosh, it was super
Okay.
easy. And I'm gonna tell you why it's easy because all I had to do is, all right, it was a marketing textbook. Here is a marketing, I just put lessons together. It's so fantastic.
Yeah.
I gave it to the publisher. They rearranged it, they put all the pictures in it. It was done. I didn't have to do almost anything but write the book.
Wow.
Now, writing books like this, oh my gosh, it is so. And then you almost, because I mean, I am a writer. I wrote a book, okay, but I don't find myself to be a writer. I find myself to be a storyteller
Yeah.
more than a writer. So I could tell these stories either in written form, I can tell them at a speaking engagement, I can do whatever, I could tell in a podcast, but I find myself to be a storyteller. I will eventually, now my end goal is to be a writer,
Sure.
okay? But then I found, even in writing this first book, your creativity, and I became like, I'm a business guy, so I'm not about artists and stuff like
Yeah.
that, dude. Is this going to make you money? All right, then do it, right? Then, but I was wrong. I became a creator. No, that's not what I wanted to look like. That's not what I wanted to sound like. That's not what. And I found myself writing and changing, and then even talking to the publisher, like, no, 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 that's not what I wanted to do. I don't. I want it to be more like. And so, yes, it was it is a learning experience. It was such
Yeah.
a learning experience that I know that my second book is going to be a lot more smooth, you
Okay.
know?
That's good though. That's what it should be, right? We kind of
Exactly.
take this experience, we internalize it, and then we will get better the next time.
Yes. And then but you do. That was the first time I've actually wanted to, like, okay, throw in the towel. I can do other things. I'm done. And
Yeah.
so you're right. There is a level of there is it was a much different experience, but I actually enjoyed it.
Yeah. What did you learn about yourself in the process?
Um, oh wow. I can be impatient. I learned. Now I've been told that by my kids, so it's not like
Sure.
something, but I didn't believe them. Now I actually believe
Yeah.
I can be a little impatient, yeah, because yeah, I can definitely be that. Mhm.
Okay. Well, let's switch gears a little bit and let's talk about who you are as a reader and what type of genres you enjoy reading.
I enjoy history. I love history books, but I was in New Orleans. I was in the Navy. I was in New Orleans, and I got a book called Arrogance of Power.
Okay.
And Arrogance of Power, great book. It's a biography. As a matter of fact, did you ever see the movie Nixon?
I don't think I have.
All right, Nixon actually is about Richard Nixon. It's a great movie. It was Oliver Stone, I believe, who did the book, or who did the movie. Great movie. All
Okay.
right, but now the book, Arrogance of Power, is what that movie was based off of. And
Oh,
so I
okay.
pick up the book. I didn't see the movie yet. I pick up the book. I was stationed down in New Orleans, and you probably, It's a reserve area. I
Okay.
bought the book just so I can spend, just so I can, waste some time. And I really got into the book. It was a book about Richard Nixon, and it talked about Richard Nixon. It talked about him growing up. It talked about his all the things he had to go through, blah 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 blah. And so I was like, wow, that's a great book. And so I started literally picking up. I said, you know what? I am going to read a presidential biography, or if there's somebody else in the book that I read about, like for example, I read about Lyndon Johnson one time. So then I had to get the book. Oh well, I got to go back. I got to go get Martin Luther King book because he was in the
Sure.
book, and I was like, okay, I got to get this book now. And so then after I got Martin Luther King's book, I had to get Malcolm X's book because I was like, oh well, I got to read this. And so what I do is I get it. So I do love reading history, but I like reading it from the standpoint of a president or
Yeah.
a world leader. So I'm doing that. I've been reading a lot of them.
Kind of making book flights within your reading. Like, oh, I read
Yeah,
about this, so now I need to go dig a little bit deeper and talk, read about this person and dig a little deeper. So you're making your own book flights over there.
I am. So I am. So that's what I do love. I do love presidential history.
Okay.
Absolutely love it. Now, once I get done reading all the presidents, I will then start reading about prime ministers of Canada. I'm gonna keep it in
Okay.
North America. There are not as many prime ministers as there are presidents. So I will get it'll be an easier read. They only started in 1867, so I'm good. I don't have that much to read.
And a lot of
So
these
yeah.
biographies are pretty dense, thick books too.
They're very dense. And it also talks about, but I do like it because it talks about the person. And it's funny that I have
Yeah.
the four P's, and all of those individuals go through four P's.
Yeah. What a cool way to read about your own work, right, within
Mhm.
amongst someone's life and see what drove them as well.
Absolutely. Mhm.
So in your busyness, how do you find time to read? Because it sounds like you have a very full life here.
I do. I do. I will read, at the end of the night.
Okay.
I will always read something at the end of the night. I do that. I try to have some wind down time. I'm a very big sports person right now, and we are in the midst of the NHL hockey season. That is my favorite sport.
Yeah.
So I don't read as
Who's your
much.
team?
I'm from Buffalo, so I'm a
Okay.
Sabres fan. I'm a miserable.
We're the Blackhawks. We're from Chicago,
Yeah.
so we're also miserable right now too.
Oh my gosh. But you've been miserable in the time that you've been miserable, you've won Stanley Cups. In the time that I've been miserable, I have not won anything. It's like,
Speaking of
and every
funny
year,
stories of moving, I mean, you probably did this when you were in the Navy too, but waking up wherever we live in the world, trying to figure out when we could watch the game when they're, especially when they're
mhm,
going through the Stanley Cup. It's like, okay, we need to wake up at 4 a.m. to watch this, or we need to stay up till midnight to watch
yeah.
this, and trying to track your time to watch the games. And yeah.
Remember, I'm from Buffalo. I didn't have to figure that out. So it's
Yeah.
kind of like, nah, I'm pretty much, yeah. But yes, I do understand that trying to watch, a sporting event and wondering what you have to do. And yes, absolutely.
Yeah, which time zone am I in and figuring out that calculation, it's we're pretty good at
Exactly.
that by now.
But the worst thing about being in the military during my time is technology was not as good as it is
Yeah.
now. I mean, you could watch anything, anywhere. You can watch it on your phone, you could do whatever. And back when I was in, you really couldn't. You'd have to, go
Yeah.
on. We had pagers where you would refresh and the score would come up.
Yeah. Well, you have been so gracious to bring a book flight for us today. Can you tell us a little bit about how they go together?
Well, again, presidential history.
Yep.
So there are three books that I love. I love the first one I love is the biography of Ulysses S. Grant.
Okay.
And in the autobiography of Ulysses S. Grant, it was fantastic. So the backstory of this was that Ulysses S. Grant he was a great military leader. He really did make good decisions. All right. I mean, there are some things that he happened. So he was dead broke. His son told him to get into some kind of investment and took all of his money. So
Okay.
he's a former president. He is, former general of the United States Union Army and all that stuff, and he is dead broke. So Mark Twain came to him and said, "Listen, I will give you." And at the time, this is a heck of a lot of money. I'll give you $300,000, which in this day and age is probably $8, $9 million to
Yeah.
write your autobiography. He never wanted to do that. He wasn't that type of person. He was a very humble person. So in the very beginning of this book, what made me want to read this book was he said, the only reason why I wrote this book is because I wanted to make sure my family is whole in my death. That's it.
Wow.
In other words, you're
Yeah.
going to give me money. All right. I wasn't going to tell you any of this stuff, but now
Yeah.
since I need to, because my son just totally jacked me up, I'm going to do this. And so his book was great. I loved that book. The book also gave me, and a lot of things that he wrote back in 1886 or 1884, whenever I think he wrote it in that time, is what's going on in our lives today when it talks about politicians, when it talks about race relations. And these are the things that happen. We still have the same mentality. Okay. And it's not just as a nation, it's as everything. And I mean, he is so frank in this book. I mean, it's funny, you become the most honest you want when you're about ready to die, and he was so frank in this book. Is a fantastic book. And so that's the book. And then the other book is Bill Clinton,
Okay.
his autobiography, My Life. Great book again, and it is a very big book. You talk about, I
Okay.
know you talked about how dense it was.
Yeah.
This
Door
guy
stoppers.
wrote, oh my gosh, this book, I think it's over 1,000 pages.
Wow.
Okay.
Okay.
And I was like, dude, I mean, you wrote this book when you were like 62 years old. I mean, you couldn't have done that much, right? Obviously, you did.
Yeah.
But great book. The one thing I love about the book is it's actually autographed by Bill Clinton.
Wow, that's cool.
So
How'd you
it
get
is,
that?
yes, it is a, well, we had to wait in line a
Okay.
long time.
Nothing glamorous, just waiting in line.
No, just wait in line. He was a very charming individual. It's a great book. It is the only book that I have that is actually, and I have a lot of presidential biographies. It is my most important one because it's actually signed
Yeah.
by him, and it is a great book. And then the other book that I had that I love is Ronald Reagan's autobiography. And
Okay.
I like the autobiography. Now, granted, there's going to be a certain spin. Like if I tell you about my life, I'm going to spin it the way I want you to know it, right?
Sure.
But I love their books because, again, these are books, more Grant and Reagan, these are books written towards the end of their life. So they didn't care what they said.
Hmm.
Okay. They weren't trying to build an image of like, hey, this is what I learned. And I love books. And like even like one of the greatest time in my life that I had with my father was towards the end of his life. Why? Because he was honest.
Yeah.
He didn't have anything. What do I have to lose? I'm going to tell you
Yeah.
everything you need to know right now. And that's how these three books are. I love those three books. Again, Grant and Reagan especially, but the one with Clinton I like because again he was a brilliant man. All three of them were
Yeah.
very smart people, and they all show how it's just great lessons that even though they were, yeah, quote unquote, they were presidents, they were also into people who had to struggle.
Yeah.
Bill Clinton was not born into wealth. Neither was Grant, and neither was Reagan. They were all born in modest, and they took themselves. That is the absolute American dream, that you can
Yeah.
do anything, because all three of them lived it in their own way.
Yeah. You've never made me want to read historical autobiographies more.
You should. You just have to. It's the way what you're trying to get out of it. Yes.
Yeah. I really
Mhm.
enjoy books though that I can walk in someone else's shoes. I love reading for that. The empathy that can build. But also to your point of exactly what you're saying is seeing what drives other people to become what they became.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And I think there's a certain sense of like you're saying of when I haven't not having read them, but when you're at the end of your life, you're kind of stripping away what didn't really matter and being this is what really mattered or the core of who they were.
Right.
And that's
Mhm.
probably why you got that authentic story,
Mhm.
which is really neat to think about. So, all right. I'm debating in my head whether I do these as audio or hard copy books. Audio, I can get through them probably much faster.
Absolutely. I will say the Grant one, it will take you a while. It is written in 1880
Okay.
English,
Okay. So
so it'll
maybe
take you a
hard
minute.
copy for
Yeah.
that one to really get
Yeah.
into it. Okay.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you for that tip. And thank you so much for this book flight. How I love to end our show is with our bonus pairings here. So these are just a speed round of questions. So,
Mhm.
are you a rereader?
No, I'm not a rereader. Now, I will say this, I will go back to a book
Okay.
and I'll say there was something that was in that book that I wanted to find again, and I'll go find it.
Sure.
And I have done that, but I'm not a full rereader.
Okay. And then what is one book that has changed your life?
The book that has really changed my life was the book on Grant.
Okay.
Grant's book changed my life because Grant was he was an individual who he was kicked out of the army, and your husband will know this, for drinking. He showed up to get his paycheck, which we don't have to do that anymore. We don't have to get our paycheck; it's automatically deposited. But
Yeah.
he showed up to get his paycheck drunk, and they kicked him out.
Wow.
And
I
they
didn't know
sent
that.
him. Yes, they sent him. So he was in San Francisco at the time. They sent him back home. He went back to Missouri because that's where his wife was. He
Okay.
went back. Literally, he had nothing. Okay, and so he had to rebuild his life from a mistake that he made, and he had to do that a number of times. He had to do that in the when he left, he got kicked out of the army. He had to do that when he was in business because he failed quite a few times, and he also had to do that, after he got out of the, like I told you, he was broke, dead
Yeah.
broke when he
Lost his
wrote the book,
money.
right?
Yeah.
So he lost all his money. And what I love about this is that he showed me that life is not linear.
Yeah.
It is a roller coaster for real. And we could be high tomorrow. It's like the song from Frank Sinatra. That's life. You know,
Yeah.
you are riding high in April, struck down in May, and
And it's
that's what
going
I
to
love about
happen.
that book. It
Yeah.
is going to happen. Mhm.
Yeah. Okay. And then where is your favorite place to read?
I like reading in front of the TV.
Okay. Can you have the
I don't know
TV on
why.
too?
Oh yeah, I can have the TV on.
With sound?
Um, with sound.
I'm very
I
impressed.
like I like reading in front of the TV. I like sitting. I am a I think I'm still like, little kids, they don't want to go to bed. You're experiencing that, right? They don't want it because they don't want to miss
Yeah.
anything.
Yeah.
I'm the same way. So I have to
Okay.
have everything, but I can read. And then sometimes I like reading with people around me, because if I read something that's very interesting, now I
Yeah.
got to share my knowledge, with somebody else. Did
Yeah.
you know? Yeah. And so, yes. And so that's how I like to read. Mhm.
Awesome. And then lastly, what are you reading next?
My next book I'm reading, again, it's funny, presidential history. I went to Johnson City, Tennessee, and this is really sad because of me writing a book, I haven't had a chance to read as much as I wanted to. But last summer, I went to Johnson City, Tennessee, and Johnson City, Tennessee is where an individual by the name of Andrew Johnson, who was president of the United States, and he was vice president under Abraham Lincoln.
Okay.
That's where he lives. So we went to his house, and I picked up a book on Andrew Johnson. Picked it up. It is still not touched, and that is the next book I am going to read. Is the book on Andrew Johnson.
Well, I hope you find some balance in your life here soon and you can pick up that book.
I will. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you so much for coming on the show today. I know your time is precious and I appreciate all you've given me.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode today with Trunnis Goggins and his book flight of historical autobiographies. We'd love to hear if you pick any of these books up or what other books you might pair with this book flight at bookishflights.com. That is also where you can find more information about today's book flight or other books that we talked about. I want to inspire a community of readers. So whenever you share a post about what you are reading or what you are reading next, especially if you have heard about it on the show, please tag us on Facebook or Instagram at Bookish Flights. If you enjoyed the show, please head over to Apple Podcasts and leave a review. Your review not only helps the show, but it also helps the podcast to reach others. Make sure you are subscribed on Apple Podcasts or Spotify to make sure you will not miss an episode. That's it for today. Thank you so much for listening. As Emma Thompson said, I think books are like people in the sense that they'll turn up in your life when you most need them. Cheers to you, dear readers. Until next time.